Okay, this is going to be part 3 of our truck alignment. I moved out to the 6500 here because everything's kind of open and easier to see to go over the front end part of it. So remember, we had a kingpin on our big trucks that attached the steering knuckle to the front axle, so we got one of those on each side. We've got our tie rod end that hooks and goes across and connects to the other wheel, so that when our drag link coming off our pitman arm and our gearbox, steering wheel's turned, it's going to move this tire. The tie rod is going to make the other tire move with it. So let's go over a few of these little terms so we understand what they mean. First one's going to be toe. So toe on a vehicle is the distance between the front tires at the front compared to the distance at the back. So what that means is we want both tires obviously pointed straight down the road, and when toe's out we get a front end wear problem that's called that feather edge, because the tire has to slide. So the way you determine feather is run your hand across it. Okay. This tire is smooth in this direction. If I go toward the inside, it tries to grab my fingers because the treads are kind of feathered, like the tips of a feather, or the edges of a feather. So anyway, that's what toe is. Now you'd think that we would just set the toe to straight, but we actually toe a vehicle in just a little bit, maybe 1/8 of a degree, because all this components have just a little bit of wear. So as the truck starts to roll down the road, it has a tendency to pull in on the front tires, both of them. So we actually tow it out just about 1/8 of a degree on most vehicles. That's usually what's in the specification, so that they're straight when they're rolling down the road. So if you see that and you're like, why isn't that 0 in a relaxed sitting still? That's where we want it, because the tendency is going to be to toe in as we head down the road. So we start out just a little bit towed out. Okay. So toe is like from the top of the tire, basically a measurement back here compared to up here. Okay, so towed in is when the front of the tires are closer than the back. Towed out is when the front are wider than the back. And of course, toe is adjusted through that tie rod end. We talked about this previously. It has left and right threads on the ends and a sleeve in the middle, so we take that clamp loose if we have to adjust toe. We rotate this whole sleeve. One direction makes it longer, one direction makes it shorter, so that's how we adjust toe. Okay. And if the toe's out, it will wear both front tires because they fight each other. So one doesn't roll straight and the other one slide. They fight each other and offset the slide, so you'll get that feather edge wear on both tires. Castor is, if you could see the kingpin, it doesn't stand straight up and down. It's actually got an angle to it. So if you think of a Castor like a front wheel on a shopping cart, that's called a Castor wheel because it's angled a little bit, and that angle allows you to be able to drive better. If it sets straight up and down, it would be harder to turn the vehicle, and it's harder for it to return to center after you negotiate a corner. So a Castor is the tilt of the kingpin as viewed from the side. So basically the axle's tilted just a little bit. So Castor helps us with a lot of things. Castor will give you a pull when you're driving. So if Castor is off from one side to the other, in other words, one wheel winds up being angled a little bit behind the other, so it wants to pull to that direction. So Castor is technically considered a non-tire wearing factor, but that's if you're driving straight down the road, which I'll get to in a minute. Gives you a drivability problem, it wants to pull, but it's not really supposed to wear tires if you're driving straight ahead. Okay. So if Castor is out on one of our big trucks, automotive's totally different, but this is on the big truck thing, right? So we have a solid axle. There's no independent suspension from side to side. We just got the leaf springs and all. So if Castor is out, we have to change the angle basically of the axle to move the kingpin forward or backward. So that is done with what's called a Castor shim. So this is like a wedge or a angled shim. This slot here goes through the center bolt on the leaf spring like we talked about before. And if I install it this way, it's thicker in the back, so it's going to roll the axle just a little bit that way. If I put it this way, it's thicker on this end, it's going to roll the axle the other way. So that's how we change Castor. Really, if Castor's out, the axle's maybe a little bit bent or something's damaged, but we can take the shim and adjust it a little bit. But we just have to be sure that we have to install the same shim on either side because we can't twist the solid axle. So this is a 1/2 degree. It's stamped here, you can't read it on this video, but it's a 4-inch shim and it's a 1/2 degree. So it's going to change the angle a 1/2 degree for Castor. So I have to put 2 of these in, one on each leaf spring, angled the same way. I can't turn one the other way and one this way. They have to be the same direction. So what we get into sometimes is Castor's a little bit out one way because the axle may be bent a little. But if I put the shims in there, I may make the Castor out a spec on the other side. So I have to kind of negotiate that sometimes, and sometimes we just have to say, hey, this axle's bent, we got to put a new axle in it. So Castor is adjustable with shims. Toe is adjustable by adjusting the tie rod. Camber is another one of our important angles. Camber is the inward or outward tilt of the top of the tire as viewed from the front. So what camber does is we want the whole tread across this tire supporting the weight of the vehicle. If the wheel starts leaning, then we put more weight on part of the tread, either outside or inside, and not distributed all the way across, so it wears down where all that weight's at. So negative camber is if the top of the tire is tilted in. Positive camber is if the top of the tire is tilted out. Now here's a rub with our industry. You have to remember you're taking a test, and the test is based on OEM manufacturer recommendations. So if camber is out, then we either have worn kingpin bushings or kingpins, which we would have already caught on our pre-alignment, or we have a bent axle. So camber is technically not adjustable. What OEM manufacturer says is it has to have a new axle because somehow the axle got bent. Aftermarket people say, no, you can adjust camber because I have a special rack that I can put this truck on and strap everything down, and I can use hydraulics to either bend that axle down a little bit to make the tire come this way, or push up on the axle right there, put a little bit of a bend to make the tire go out. So aftermarket people say they can adjust camber for you. The OEM says it has to have a new axle because that's a special hardened steel, special iron, not steel, but special iron. A lot of times it's ductile. So they say that you can't bend that without damaging it or weakening it. So that's the thing. Just remember, for our test, we're talking OEM manufacturer stuff, so camber is not adjustable on a solid I-beam axle truck. Automotive it is. On this truck it's not. If we had an adjustable drag link here, which most trucks don't, the drag link would be the same as a tie rod. It would have left and right threads and a sleeve in the middle that would rotate. If that was adjustable, the only thing that does is centers the steering wheel. It doesn't change any of the front end alignment factors. So if you got an adjustable drag link, you can completely line the front end, but the steering wheel will be off a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. The adjustable drag link allows you to adjust that and straighten the steering wheel up. Does not affect the alignment of the truck because it's before it starts moving this front tire. So adjustable drag link is just to center the steering wheel so that the steering wheel straight and the customer doesn't complain about it being off. Your turn signals will work after you turn a corner and they'll cancel and turn the turn signals off and all that.